Have you ever felt yourself slowly disappearing from someone's life? Not because you changed, not because you did something wrong, but simply because they stopped valuing you. At first, they cared. They noticed your efforts. They appreciated your presence. But then, somewhere along the way, they started treating you like an option, an afterthought, a convenience, rather than a person. And what did you do? You tried harder. You reached out more. You became more available. You reminded them over and over again that you were still here, still willing to give, still ready to stay. But the harder you tried, the more invisible you became. Because here's the truth. People don't appreciate what they think will always be there. So what do you do when someone stops valuing you? You don't beg, you don't argue, you don't explain, you simply disappear. Not in anger, not in resentment, but in power. You pull back your energy, your presence, your attention. And then, you wait. Because the moment they realize you're no longer there, the moment they feel the absence of what they once took for granted, that's when the truth reveals itself. Will they notice? Will they regret it? Will they chase after you? Or will they let you go without a second thought? No words, no arguments, just action. Try this one simple trick and watch what happens. This is Victory STOIC, the place where you learn to value yourself first. If you're ready to stop chasing people who don't appreciate you, like, share, subscribe, and comment below. I choose my worth, because those who don't value you don't deserve you. Number 1. If you have to convince someone to value you, you've already lost respect, appreciation, love. These things are either given freely or they are not given at all. The moment you find yourself explaining, proving, or begging someone to recognize your worth, you've already placed yourself in a losing position. Think about it. Have you ever had to convince someone that air is necessary to breathe? That water is essential to life? Of course not, because the value of these things is undeniable. People don't need to be reminded of something truly valuable to them. They feel it. They know it. Yet, when it comes to relationships, whether in love, friendship, or work, we convince ourselves that we must prove our worth. Take Emma. She had been in a relationship with Ryan for 3 years. In the beginning, he cherished her. He noticed the small things, how she made his coffee just the way he liked it, how she listened to him when no one else did, how she supported him in ways he never had to ask for. But over time, things shifted. Ryan stopped thanking her, stopped appreciating her. He would cancel plans without warning, ignore her texts for hours, even days, and brush off her concerns with, "You're overreacting." Emma felt the change, and instead of pulling away, she did the worst thing possible. She tried harder. She texted more, called more, asked him what was wrong. She adjusted herself, hoping to be better. But no matter what she did, Ryan didn't change. He didn't suddenly wake up one day and realize how lucky he was. Instead, he valued her even less. Because the moment you start trying to convince someone to appreciate you, you've already told them you're not worth much. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, once said, "The approval of those who do not value virtue is worthless." In other words, if someone cannot recognize your worth on their own, their validation is meaningless. So what should Emma have done? She should have stopped trying. The moment she noticed Ryan slipping away, she should have matched his energy. She should have become distant, cold, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. She should have let him feel her absence instead of forcing him to acknowledge her presence. Because here's the truth. If someone values you, they will not need reminders. If someone wants you, they will not let you wonder. If someone respects you, you will never have to beg. The next time you find yourself explaining your worth, stop. Step back and watch what happens. Because if someone truly cares, they will notice your absence more than they ever noticed your presence. And if they don't, then they were never meant to have you in the first place. Number 2, pull back. Let them feel your absence. There is no greater illusion than thinking if you just try a little harder, they will finally see your worth. That if you reach out more, stay patient, give more love, or prove your loyalty, they will suddenly realize how much you mean to them. But here's the truth. People don't appreciate what they think will always be there. The more available you are, the more predictable your presence becomes, the easier it is for them to take you for granted. And the only way to break this cycle? Disappear. Not forever, not in anger, but just enough for them to notice the silence. Take David and Sophia. David was always there, always the first to text, always the first to make plans, always understanding, always available, always waiting for Sophia to give him even half of what he gave her. At first, Sophia liked it, liked the attention, the security of knowing that no matter what, David would be there. But over time, she started responding later, canceling plans, treating him like an option, not a priority. David felt the shift. So he did what most people do when they feel someone slipping away. He chased harder. He texted more. He asked if she was okay. He tried to be more interesting, more patient, more worth it. And what did that do? It pushed her away even more, because when you make someone the center of your world, they begin to think they are above you. But then one day, David stopped. No more morning texts, no more last-minute "let's hang out" messages, no more waiting around for Sophia to decide when he was worth her time, just silence. And suddenly, she noticed. She checked her phone expecting his usual messages, but nothing. She waited for him to reach out first, but he didn't. At first, she brushed it off. But then days passed, and then weeks, and for the first time she felt what he had been feeling all along: uncertainty. Why isn't he texting? Did something happen? Did I do something wrong? Because that's how human nature works. People only notice your value when they have to question whether or not they've lost it. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, once wrote, "Withdraw within yourself, but first make yourself worthy of withdrawing into." Translation: your absence only matters when your presence has value. So if someone is taking you for granted, stop chasing, stop trying, pull back. If they care, they will feel the loss. If they don't, you have your answer. Either way, you win. Number 3, stop playing the savior. Let them face life without you. Some people don't appreciate you because they never have to feel the consequences of losing you. They make reckless choices, take you for granted, and neglect you when it's convenient. But the moment they need something, they know exactly who to call. And the worst part? You answer every time. Take Rachel and Mark. They had been friends for years. Mark was always in trouble. Financial problems, relationship drama, bad decisions piling up one after another. But no matter what, Rachel was always there to fix things. Mark forgot to pay his rent? Rachel lent him money. Did Mark break up with yet another girlfriend? Rachel listened to him complain for hours. Did Mark lose his job? Rachel helped him look for a new one. And did he ever truly appreciate her? No. Why would he? There was no reason to. Rachel made sure he never had to experience what life was like without her. But one day she woke up, she realized she wasn't being valued, she was being used. So the next time Mark called, desperate for help, she did something she had never done before. She didn't answer. No angry texts, no explanations, just silence. At first, Mark didn't even notice. He just called someone else, expecting Rachel to come running eventually. But then a week passed, then 2. And for the first time, he had to face his mess without her. And suddenly, Rachel's value became clear, not because she proved it, not because she reminded him, but because he had to live without it. People only realize the weight of your presence when they have to carry their burdens alone. The Stoics understood this well. Epictetus once said, "Do not waste yourself on those who refuse to stand on their own." You are not their savior. You are not their backup plan. So what do you do when someone only remembers you when they need something? You stop being available. Let them struggle. Let them wonder. Let them face their problems without your rescue. And if they come back with genuine appreciation, good. And if they disappear entirely, even better. Because the moment you stop saving them, you start saving yourself. Number 4, build a life where you don't need them and watch what happens. Nothing unsettles a person who once took you for granted more than realizing you are perfectly fine without them. Most people expect you to beg, to sulk, to chase them, to sit in a corner and mourn their absence. They expect to be missed. But when you don't, when do you thrive instead? When your life gets better, not worse? That's when they start to question everything. Take Daniel and Anna. Anna was in a long-term relationship with Daniel. At first, he adored her. He paid attention, he showed up, and he made her feel wanted. But over time, his effort faded. He stopped texting first. He ignored her when she spoke. He acted as if she was just another part of his routine, always there, always waiting, never a priority. At first, Anna did what most people do. She tried harder. She asked what was wrong. She tried to be better. She adjusted, accommodated, and sacrificed, and none of it worked. And then one day she stopped trying. She didn't make a big announcement. She just shifted her energy. Instead of waiting around for his attention, she focused on herself. Instead of begging for connection, she built her happiness. She started going out, working out, laughing more, glowing in a way she hadn't in years. And Daniel? He noticed. At first he acted like he didn't care, but then he saw the pictures, heard the stories, felt the shift. She wasn't sitting at home missing him. She was out there living. And suddenly he wanted her attention again. Not because he missed her, but because he couldn't stand the thought that she didn't need him anymore. People expect you to crumble when they walk away. When you don't, when you grow instead, it forces them to confront the one thing they never considered. Maybe, just maybe, they were the ones who lost something. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." That means your joy, your success, your fulfillment. None of it should depend on another person's presence. So what do you do when someone stops valuing you? You don't explain yourself. You don't beg. You don't prove your worth. You simply live so well that your absence speaks louder than any words ever could. And if they come back, if they suddenly remember what they had, too bad, because by then you won't need them anymore. Number 5, become a mystery and watch them chase the unknown. There once was a powerful ruler, a king whose name was whispered across kingdoms, feared by his enemies and envied by his allies. His name was well known, but his actions? A mystery. His advisors never knew his next move. His rivals never understood his strategies. Even those closest to him never fully grasped the depths of his mind. And that was his greatest strength, because what is unknown becomes irresistible. Now imagine another ruler, a king who speaks too much, who reveals every thought, every fear, every intention. His enemies know his weaknesses before he even lifts a sword. His allies respect him less, for what is easily known is easily dismissed. Which king do you think commands more power? Which one do people chase? The power of mystery in the modern world. You might not be a king, but this same principle applies to your life. Take Lena. She used to tell everyone everything, her dreams, her struggles, her daily thoughts. She believed that the more she shared, the more connected people would feel to her. But instead, people stopped listening. Her friends barely reacted to her stories because they already knew what she was going to say. Her presence became predictable. And worse, the person she wanted attention from the most barely even cared anymore. Then one day, she changed. She stopped announcing her every move. She stopped oversharing. She let silence do the talking. She posted less. She spoke less. And suddenly, the world started paying attention. People who ignored her before, now they were asking questions. The person who took her for granted, now they were watching closely, trying to figure out what had changed. Because of what people can't see, they start to imagine. And imagination is always more powerful than reality. Why mystery works. The Stoics understood this. Epictetus once said, "Silence is the safest response to those who question your worth." Because when you reveal less, people wonder, they get curious, they start chasing. And the best part, you are no longer the one seeking validation. How to become a mystery in your own life. Share less. Not everyone needs to know what you're thinking, doing, or feeling. Let people wonder. Leave things unsaid. Let them ask. Let them work to understand you. Be unpredictable. Change your habits. Disrupt your patterns. Become someone they can't quite figure out. Because when people don't know everything about you, they have no choice but to pay closer attention. When they do, you will no longer be chasing them. They will be chasing you. Number 6, stop trying to prove yourself. Silence speaks louder than words. In a distant land, there were 2 warriors, Kale and Soren. Kale was strong, but he was also desperate for recognition. Every time he entered a battle, he boasted about his victories before the fight even began. He shouted about his strength, reminded people of his past achievements, and demanded respect from those around him. But the more he talked, the less people believed in his power. Soren, on the other hand, said nothing. He did not argue with those who doubted him. He did not remind others of his past. He simply sharpened his sword, stepped onto the battlefield, and let his actions speak. When the fight began, Mikhail wasted his energy shouting, trying to convince his enemies that he was powerful. Soren, he moved in silence, and he won. And when the dust settled, no one doubted his strength, because he had proven himself without ever saying a word. The power of not proving anything. In life, there are two types of people: those who feel the need to constantly prove their worth, and those who simply live in a way that makes their worth undeniable. Take Ethan and Marcus. Ethan was in a relationship with a woman who constantly belittled him. She made him feel small, like he was never good enough. And instead of walking away, he tried to prove himself. He worked harder. He bought her gifts. He explained over and over again why he was worthy of her love. And what did she do? She respected him even less. Because the moment you start trying to convince someone of your value, you've already told them that your value is negotiable. Then there was Marcus. His partner also began to take him for granted. She stopped appreciating his efforts and treated him like an option rather than a priority. But Marcus? He didn't argue. He didn't beg. He didn't explain. He simply walked away. And suddenly she saw what she had lost. Because here's the truth. When you stop proving your worth, people are forced to recognize it on their own. The Stoic way. Silence over explanation. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." Don't explain your worth. Live in a way that makes it obvious. Don't beg for respect. Carry yourself in a way that demands it. Don't try to convince anyone to stay. Let them realize what they lose when you leave. Because in the end, those who truly value you will see your worth without you ever having to say a word. Number 7. Stop expecting them to change. Change how you treat them instead. There was once a man who stood before a massive stone wall, banging his fists against it over and over again. He believed that if he just hit hard enough, if he just tried a little longer, the wall would crack, would shift, would finally let him through. But no matter how much effort he poured into it, the wall did not move. The more he pushed, the more exhausted he became, and yet the wall remained the same. It was only when he stepped back, when he finally stopped trying to break through, that he saw something he had been blind to all along. There was an open door right next to him. You cannot force someone to value you. People waste years, even decades, trying to change those who refuse to change. Take Sarah. She spent her entire relationship waiting for James to appreciate her. She gave, she adjusted, she forgave. She told herself, if I just love him more, if I just explain myself better, one day he'll see what he has. But every time she tried harder, he valued her less. Because James had no reason to change. He knew Sarah would always be there. He knew she would always tolerate the disrespect, the neglect, the indifference. So why would he treat her differently? Then one day, Sarah made a decision. She didn't argue, she didn't beg, she simply stopped. She stopped being available. She stopped over-explaining. She stopped treating him like he was special, like he was worth the effort when he gave her nothing in return. And suddenly, James noticed. Not because he had changed, but because Sarah had. Because when you stop prioritizing those who take you for granted, they are forced to face a truth they never expected. They were never special. You just treated them that way. The Stoic truth: you hold the power, not them. Epictetus once wrote, "You cannot control others. You can only control how you respond to them." If someone does not respect you, stop showing them respect. If someone does not appreciate you, stop giving them effort. If someone refuses to value you, stop making them a priority. Because the moment you stop treating them as important, they will either realize their mistake or they will disappear. Either way, you win. Number 8. People don't recognize value until it's gone. The psychology of absence. The human brain is wired in a cruel, ironic way. It adapts too well to what is constant. What we see every day, what is always available, what never demands attention, we stop noticing it. This isn't just philosophy, it's neuroscience. The phenomenon is called hedonic adaptation, the science behind why people take you for granted. Hedonic adaptation is a psychological process where the brain quickly adjusts to both positive and negative experiences, making them feel normal. Do you buy a new car? At first, you're excited, you admire it, take care of it, and feel grateful for it. But after a few months, it's just another vehicle. Did you start a new relationship? For the first few weeks, everything is electric. You cherish every moment, but after a while, your brain normalizes their presence. Do you have a supportive friend or partner? At first, you appreciate their kindness, their patience, and their presence. But over time, you stop noticing what they do. It just becomes expected. The psychology of absence, why losing something wakes people up. Here's the interesting part. While our brain quickly adapts to having something, it does not adapt as quickly to losing it. This is why people don't appreciate what they have until they no longer have it. When you suddenly remove something that was once constant, the brain experiences a cognitive dissonance. It starts asking, wait, where did they go? Why aren't they reaching out anymore? Did I take them for granted? And the longer you stay gone, the more the brain amplifies this absence. The silence grows louder than any words ever could. How to use this to your advantage. If someone is taking you for granted, if they are treating your presence as an expectation rather than a privilege, stop being so available. Pull away. Reduce your presence. Let them feel the loss. Give them space to question. Let them wonder what happened. Allow them to realize on their own what they are losing. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, once wrote, "The things we love are like leaves on a tree. They seem permanent until they fall. So let them feel the fall. If they truly value you, they will notice the gap. They will reflect, they will regret, and they will make the effort to bring you back. And if they don't, then they were never meant to keep you in the first place." Number 9. Let them face the consequences of their indifference. When someone stops valuing you, the worst thing you can do is explain yourself. They were there. They saw your effort. They had every chance to appreciate you, and they chose not to. The more you try to make them understand, the more power you give away. Instead, let them feel the weight of their own choices. Take Michael and Laura. Michael was a devoted friend, always checking in, always making time, and always the first to offer support. But over time, Laura stopped reciprocating. She took longer to reply, canceled plans at the last minute, and treated his friendship like something she could pick up and drop whenever she pleased. Michael noticed, but instead of pulling away, he tried harder. He reminded her how much he cared, asked if he had done something wrong, and gave her even more patience. But the more he tried, the more distant she became. One day, he had enough. He didn't send a long message explaining how he felt. He didn't demand answers or closure. He simply stopped. No anger, no accusations, just absence. At first, Laura didn't even notice. Then weeks passed, no texts, no invitations, no effort. Slowly, reality set in. She reached out casually at first, then more urgently, but it was too late. Michael had moved on. And that's how people learn. Not through words, not through explanations, but through the realization that you were not obligated to stay where you were not valued. Epictetus once said, "If someone mistreats you, walk away. Their behavior is their burden to bear, not yours." You don't owe anyone a lecture on why they lost you. You don't need to break yourself trying to make them understand. Let them sit with the silence, with the emptiness they created. If they truly care, they will feel the loss and take responsibility. And if they don't, then they never would have, no matter how many times you tried to explain. Number 10. The right people will come when you stop holding on to the wrong ones. One of the hardest lessons to learn is that not everyone is meant to stay in your life. Some people are temporary, some people are lessons, and some people, no matter how much you want them to care, simply don't. But the mistake most people make isn't losing someone. It's holding on to those who have already let go. Take Natalie. She spent years trying to save a friendship that had long since died. She made plans, but they were ignored. She reached out, but responses were short and delayed. She told herself it was just a phase, that her friend was busy, and that if she just kept trying, things would go back to the way they were. But they didn't. Then one day she stopped. No dramatic goodbye, no confrontation, just quiet acceptance. She let go, not with bitterness, but with the understanding that some people leave because they are supposed to. And something happened that she never expected. Space opened up in her life. With that space came new friendships, new connections, and new people who valued her presence rather than tolerated it. People who didn't make her feel like she was chasing after something that no longer existed. The problem isn't that people leave. The problem is that we keep running after them while ignoring the ones who are waiting to walk in. You cannot make room for what you deserve if your hands are still full of what you don't. The Stoic philosopher Seneca once said, "Associate only with those who uplift you, whose presence calls forth your best." If someone has to be convinced to stay, they are not meant to. The moment you stop chasing, you'll realize the ones who are meant for you have been there all along. Number 11. You don't need anyone to give you value. You are the value. There comes a moment in life when you must decide. Are you a ruler of your destiny, or are you a beggar, waiting for others to hand you scraps of validation? Most people live as if their worth depends on how others see them. They chase approval, bend themselves to fit expectations, and desperately hope that someone, anyone, will recognize their value. But the truth is this: if you need someone to validate your worth, you were never standing in your power to begin with. Look at the great empires of history. The strongest rulers did not beg to be acknowledged. They built, they conquered, they became undeniable. Their presence commanded respect, not because they asked for it, but because they embodied it. And you? You are your empire. If someone fails to see your worth, that is their blindness, not your burden. If someone treats you as replaceable, let them replace you, because they will soon realize they made a mistake. You are never an extra in someone else's story. You are the main event. Marcus Aurelius, the great Stoic emperor, wrote, "A man's worth is no greater than his perception of himself." So stop waiting for permission to be great. Stop shrinking to fit into spaces that don't deserve you. You don't need to be chosen because you choose yourself. The ones who recognize your value will stand beside you. The ones who don't, they were never meant to walk in your kingdom. And when you understand this, when you finally see yourself for what you truly are, you will never beg for respect again. You will simply exist in your power, and the world will take notice. Closing, the final truth: you don't need to be chosen. You choose yourself. You cannot force someone to value you, but you can remove yourself from places where you are not valued. You cannot beg for respect, but you can walk away from those who refuse to give it. You cannot make someone see your worth, but you can live in a way that makes it impossible to ignore. If you find yourself fighting to be seen, to be appreciated, to be treated with basic dignity, stop, step back. Watch what happens when you no longer make yourself so easily available. If they come back with true effort, then maybe, just maybe, they were worth another chance. But if they don't, then they were never meant to walk beside you. So here's your challenge: don't explain, don't argue, don't beg, just leave. Focus on yourself, build your empire. Become so strong, so radiant, so unshakable that those who once took you for granted will regret the day they ever lost you. This is Victory Stoic, the place where you reclaim your power, master your emotions, and live with unshakable worth. If you're ready to stop chasing, like, share, subscribe, and comment below. I choose my worth. Because once you realize your goal, you will never settle for less again.